Jane Long is often called the Mother of Texas, but wait, don't get confused. She isn't married to Stephen F. Austin. She's called the Mother of Texas for a different reason. Jane was born July 23, 1798. Her parents died when she was young, and she was raised by her wealthy older sister and her sister's husband. They lived in Natchez, Mississippi. Jane fell in love with Dr. James Long, and the two were married on May 14, 1815. Jane was very devoted to James. She tried to do all she could to help him reach his dreams. James dreamed of being powerful. He wanted to be rich, famous, and the boss. When Father Hidalgo started the Mexican Revolution against Spain, James saw his chance to make his dreams come true. He thought if he helped Mexico win its independence, he could become the president or governor of Texas. James gathered supplies and volunteers, soldiers, and headed to Texas. By this time, Jane had a baby girl named Anne, and she was pregnant with her second child, but she couldn't bear being away from James. So 12 days after giving birth to baby Rebecca, Jane began a journey to get to Texas to find James. She headed to Texas with her 2 little girls and a slave named Keon. Along the way, baby Rebecca became ill and died, but Jane kept going. She wanted to find James. They finally reunited and built a fort on the Bolivar Peninsula on Galveston Island. They stayed there while James trained his soldiers. Soon Anne was pregnant with another baby. James left Jane with other families at the fort and went to Mexico. Jane promised to be at the fort when he returned. He didn't. She waited and waited and waited for him to come back. All the other families got tired of waiting and left, but Jane refused to break her promise, and she stayed. No one could convince her to leave Texas. Even the pirate Jean Lafitte couldn't convince her to leave. While she waited, she, Keon, and Anne tried to make the fort look full of people. When the Indians came close to the fort, they fired the cannons. While she waited for James to return, Jane Long gave birth to another little girl named Mary. This was the first recorded birth in Texas, so we thought. And that is how Jane Long came to be called the Mother of Texas. However, we found some other records later on in history that proved that there were other people who recorded the first birth of Texas. But by then, the name had stuck. Jane kept waiting and waiting and waiting, until finally, one day, she received some very bad news. She found out that James was dead. He had been captured by Spanish soldiers and shot in a prison in Mexico. Jane, Keon, and Anne went back to the United States after Jane found out about James's death. But she didn't stay long. She came back to Texas and lived in Austin's colony. Jane may not have been the actual first person to record a birth in Texas, but she really did still deserve the title Mother of Texas, because when she came back to Texas the second time and lived in Austin's colony, she really took care of a lot of people. She owned a hotel and had her own farm, and people really looked up to her. So maybe she earned her nickname, the Mother of Texas, after all.